everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And Vince, today's question comes from Magpie2541, who asked us what we like to see in movie commentaries. And given that we do a lot of commentaries ourselves on the channel, never for, anything where we're actually, qualified to do a commentary. It's never anything we worked on. It's always just things that we, like, and so we do a commentary. But obviously, you and I have both watched plenty of movie commentaries, and this seemed like a neat thing to talk about. I don't think we've done this topic before.
I don't think so.
So anyway, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Vince, just right off the top of your head, what sort of... well, let me ask you this question first, actually. Do you like... Boy, I feel like we've talked about this before. I hope I'm wrong. Do you like, in movie commentaries, do you prefer to listen to one person talking about their experiences or many people talking about their experiences?
I prefer a dialogue. I think that's more interesting. Because, one person just word vomit, whatever comes to mind. I feel like there could be some kind of coherency to it, but I don't trust it, so I like the idea of two people sitting down saying, hey, Mr. Yada Yada, remember this thing that we did. And personally, I would also like those two people to have some kind of...
chemistry,
rapport, have some kind of experience with each other. That because I've heard several times where they're like, well, here's the guy that designed the costumes, and this is the guy that's never met him, and I thought brought coffee to someone at one point.
They both worked on the project, but they had nothing to do together, yeah.
It seems like a weird mesh. But I tend to prefer a dialogue to answer that question.
For me, it depends entirely on who it is.
That's fair.
Joss Whedon I can listen to all frickin' day long.
Well, if you got a guy that's from the ground at its inception created something and is willing to see it through... that just makes sense.
Yes, but that doesn't mean he's going to deliver a good commentary on his own, because I believe this is a skill.
Yeah,
I really do. I think being able to sit down in front of a microphone for 2 hours while watching something you worked on and make it interesting for an audience the entire time is not the easiest thing to do. And there's a few schools of thought about this, right? Like, I feel like you could almost teach a short class on how to give effective commentaries. Because, I've listened to some people, for instance, Tim Burton. Interesting things to say, way too dry, at least for the ones that I've listened to. I've listened to him talk about Batman and Batman Returns, and his commentaries are really droll. Every now and again he'll say something really interesting. That's where, listening to that commentary is where I learned that he and Jack Palance didn't get along. I learned a lot. But we listened to 89, I learned a lot, but the problem is I just didn't find him on his own very interesting. I thought he was a little too monotone, and I felt like he didn't really want to be there. It felt kind of obligatory. And so, but the thing is, of course, these people are not making a product in and of itself, really. They're being brought in by... whoever's putting the disc together to do these things. So, sometimes you get people that just don't really want to be there. That's a thing. But on the other hand, I've listened to, and I can't think of a great example, but I've listened to some where it is one guy, and you wonder, actually Favreau was kind of like this with Iron Man. His commentaries were great on the Iron Man films. And sometimes you listen to one where you can't believe how organized they are. Yeah. Like, sometimes, especially when it's not two people, it's not a dialogue, you have one guy, it sounds like they're reading a script, but they're clearly not reading a script, you know what I mean? Where you're like, how many notes do you have? Or do you really just have your thoughts together this much that where it really does kind of sound like a full produced piece all by its lonesome?
It's almost like some different classes I've been in, and you could make the argument that it's kind of like delivering a lecture about something that you should know something about if you're giving a commentary on it.
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely.
But I used to have a teacher that, and I've talked.
But lecturers usually read from notes. I always wonder how many notes some of these directors have or writers.
I would almost feel like there's one of two ways to make any kind of lecture, whether it's for a class or for a commentary. Where one, you need to be prepared and you need to have notes. And you need to have things that you know to say. The other is when I took this Australian literature class, the teacher showed up to class, and he's read this stuff back and forward, and that he knows his stuff, but he didn't show up to class with PowerPoints and notes. He said, "So, what do you think of this? And then he just come up with something that he's been apparently, like, in the back of his mind, like, he read it and he came up with it, and now we're just talking about it, and we're into it. And that's, you know, that's a valid form of lecture.
Because it's really engaging.
You're exploring a topic. You're just exploring it in the here and now, as opposed to, I've analyzed this, and this is what you need to know.
Yeah.
So I'm okay either way.
Which is not the same thing as teaching, but sometimes the same things are accomplished, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, especially when you get to, like, higher learning, at some point you're almost discussing with the teacher more than you are having information forced into your head.
Yeah, sure.
So that's, you know, I would like to say that the thing that I like about commentaries is when they can give me a deeper understanding of something.
Yeah.
So the person who's giving the commentary doesn't have to be integrally involved in the thing that they're commenting on.
Yeah, if we're not just talking about writers or directors or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, people, if we have just outside people giving commentary, if you can give me a new way of thinking about this, if you can keep me engaged and make me think about the piece through what you're saying to me, that's valid.
Oh, and I was even going to keep this for a while just on DVD and Blu-ray commentaries, but let me tack this here for a second and say that there is some stuff to explore here on maybe advice we might have to people who want to give commentaries on movies they think they know pretty well and that kind of thing. Let's talk about that. First, though, just for a little bit, let's stick with people actually working on them. Just because I wanted to actually do a whole thing on that, if that's cool with you. But yeah. When I'm listening to commentaries, I enjoy one of two things. I enjoy the commentary where a person I don't like real fluff commentaries. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like where they're talking it up so hard like it's like this incredibly amazing artistic piece, or where most important. I mean, sometimes you get things where it is and there's no way to not look at it that way. You know what I mean? Like, you know, when the people that made Fight Club have reverence for Fight Club, I'm okay with that. But what I really kind of resist, though, are the commentaries where you get somebody who is trying to tell you what the movie means.
Yeah.
I really hate that. Let the work stand on its own. A commentary ought to... You can talk about what you wanted to convey with scenes and things like that, but don't tell me what the interpretation is of the story you're telling. So, you know, I want something real. I don't want something fluffy. Or the other kind of commentary I can enjoy, and this is be it one person or a group of people, are the ones where it's a not very good movie, but everyone involved thinks it's amazing because it's funny. It's just hilarious. I really enjoy that. Superman 4 commentary is great because, or not Superman 4. Actually, that was great for a different reason. That was great because it's one of the co-writers, I think, who is keenly aware of what didn't work, and he talks a whole lot about what didn't work. And
that's interesting.
That's very interesting. Counter to that, the guy who directed Supergirl, who still thinks it's a brilliant movie, and that is so much fun. I really,
awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. So I can enjoy either of those things for completely different reasons. Listening to the people who made Howard the Duck, man, that's another one. I don't remember if they did a commentary on that or if it was just behind the scenes, but that's another one. That's If you've not listened to the people who made that talking about that,
Howard the Duck is hilarious.
They are in there. There's a little bit of denial going on there. That's all I'm saying.
You know, I feel like people need to have some kind of... well, you know, I would almost expect that people have some kind of self-awareness where, like, if the entire culture speaks out and says, this is dreck, this is just awful, how do you not kind of look back at yourself and what you created and go, yeah, you're kind of right about that part?
Well, a lot of with Howard the Duck, though, was them, like defending it against that.
That's just weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand where somebody would say, yeah, sure, I think it works on this level, but this is where it failed to.
I can completely understand what yeah, exactly.
But, or it would have worked had I'd gotten my way and we done this, but, you know, to some extent, an apology for what you made is easily defendable, because if everyone hates it, then you could say, yeah, no, I understand. But trying to defend yourself against people, that's almost a laughable quest.
It depends on what the project is, though, because there are some things that are like cult classics that were like critically panned at the time or whatever, that do have kind of a big following, and where they were kind of misunderstood films. That's a little different. So yeah, I would hesitate to say that I wouldn't hesitate. I would never say this. I would never say that like every movie that was critically panned deserves to be, and so the people making the commentary commentary should just like throw their hands in the air and say, okay, this thing that I spent all this blood, sweat, and tears on, yeah, it's terrible because everybody told me it was. No,
right? No, I would agree with that.
Certainly not. But if you made a movie where your central character can fly, and your central character flew out of water, and you couldn't figure out how to do it right, how to make that look good, so you just put a life-size cardboard cutout of that character in the water and flew it up, and that was the way you had it fly out of the water, you shouldn't, years later, pretend like that was genius ingenuity. That's what the guy who made Supergirl did. That's all I'm saying.
That's sad.
Because he's like, you're not going to believe how he did this. Like, no, I can tell.
I can tell.
So I'm sorry. There it is. Yeah. So anyway, case by case basis.
You know, I would agree with that. I mean, and I guess what I'm really saying is that you standing up to try to defend yourself against everyone else. Surely there's someone, if your movie is truly redeemable, surely there's someone out there that you can talk to that can give some perspective. Because this is an instance where other people saying something about a movie, giving you a new way of looking at it, becomes relevant. Because if it's just the creator sitting there going, yeah, I don't care what you guys say, I liked it.
You know, that actually brings up a really interesting thing, and that is perspective. The time after, the amount of time you wait before you do one. I tend to, with the exception of certain creators, certain directors, writers, what have you, actors, I tend to prefer the commentaries that were made years and years after the film was made. Then I do the ones where they put where they do the commentary while the thing is still in the theater. That's a big thing now. Like most of them are put out that way, and I like to see somebody get some perspective from it for that exact reason, so that they can address some of those concerns and things. Because a lot of the time, you haven't even had first weekend reviews, much less some time away from it. So I mean, like, sometimes it'll even be one of the first times the person or the people have even seen a full cut of it. You know what I mean? And I like to see the people to be able to stand back a bit, give some perspective. This is what we were making, and this is what the result was ultimately. Or years after the fact. The culture has kind of come to kind of this consensus on it, and so we can approach it from the perspective of this is how it affected the culture and that kind of thing. I mean, that's the whole reason I wait on Rewind. I like to see those people wait a while. So like, I really enjoy the movies that get a release 20 years later when DVD wasn't around, you know what I mean? That finally get a release and finally get a commentary. I love those. The biggest difficulty with that, of course, is sometimes people have passed away. That's the big thing. But
if you do a commentary super early, you run the risk of being too attached to the project, and thereby you're not talking about what you made, you're talking about what you think you made.
Yes.
Which can be two different things. I mean, sometimes they're the same thing. Sometimes people do have a lot of introspection, and they realize that something that they made is exactly what they made.
Yeah, sure.
But sometimes, I think that it really takes a person to be able to step back from themselves and go, this is what I set out to do, and this is what I achieved. Because I don't feel like that you can really say in a collaborative medium that what you set out to do is 100% what made it to the screen.
It's impossible.
So it seems kind of unlikely, especially with funding issues
even
coming along.
Even if you're the writer, director,
and
the main actor, you still are not going to get precisely the same project that was on paper.
Yeah, because you have people that come up with different ideas, you implement other ideas while you're making a movie.
You're not the person that built the set.
Yeah, I mean, things are going to be just a wee bit on the different side, right. Which maybe that in itself gives merit to some kind of commentary. Like, this differs from my original vision, but...
Well, and perhaps what I might enjoy seeing more often, in fact, is the contrast. Would be the commentary. Do this on a disc. I've never seen this. Here's the commentary that say I'll just make up someone. I don't know if he ever did any commentaries on any of these, but I just don't remember. Let's say George Lucas did a commentary on Episode 1, and he did it. Like in 1999, just as the film was being released. Mm-hmm. And then let's say it's 2014 and he does a new release and he does a second commentary. Now, if this actually happened, somebody tell me. I don't think this happened. But like, let's say on the same disc, you get George Lucas's 1999 commentary, Again, I'm just making this up. And then you get a 2014 comedy. Wouldn't it be very interesting?
That'd be neat.
Yeah, because that way you would get... Because I see the pros and cons of both. The pros, one of the big pros to getting it right away, I suppose, is since they haven't had that cultural perspective yet, they don't know how it's going to impact the audience. That hasn't tarnished their vision of it yet, or their view of what they made, and then because... You know, once something becomes either really successful or not successful, it changes you. There's no way that it couldn't. So wouldn't it be neat to get both?
That would be neat. That almost gives merit to doing a commentary right out of the gates.
Yeah.
And then later on coming back to it. Like, I would almost have to promise myself to do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's wonderful. Sure.
Because a person can, even somebody unrelated, a person can watch a movie and say, this movie was terrible. Worst movie I've ever seen. Come back 10 years later and go, you know what? Wasn't that bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think you had that
we do it all the time. We do it all the time.
I think you had that with the Punisher 2004 movie.
I did.
Where you said that was awful, and then you came back and you were like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. It was pretty good.
Yeah, well, because I changed as a person. I wasn't the same person in 2004 that I was when I watched it again in 2010 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know, at the time, I was, not to get too much into this, but I mean, like, this is... I'm saying this also for the broader sense. I think this happens to people. At the time, I was younger. I was a little bit more innocent. I had a difficult time with that kind of violence, and I let that get in the way of what the story was. I wasn't really enjoying the story. I was put off by the visuals. When I was that way with Blade also. Right. I didn't just not like it. I didn't finish it. And Blade was the same way. And so then years later, I finally sat down and watched each of those and finished them. And I had seen a few more things. I had seen Jack Bauer torture enough people that and other things that you know it was easier for me to digest those sorts of things. And what a delightful experience to go back to something that I thought I couldn't even digest, that I couldn't stomach, and realize I would have never been able to do a Fight Club at that point. And then to watch them years later and go, my goodness, what I would have been missing.
Yeah.
Without this, and so I feel like the people making something, it's got to be a somewhat similar sort of thing. This is the reason, by the way, that we do so many videos on superhero movies, because we're constantly exploring these things. That's why we'll do one as soon as it comes out, and then later on I'll do a rewind. It might be the polar opposite view. I mean, how you feel about something right away is not necessarily going to be the same, and very often is not exactly the same. I would argue that I never have exactly the same experience. Once I've gotten some perspective, once I've gotten time to really digest it, think about it in multiple viewings.
Yeah, I mean, and you can have a movie that when you first saw it, you saw it for exactly what it is. Let's say we'll call it an ordinary movie, and you're like, well, it's not breaking any new ground. This character has the exact same hero's journey that we've seen before, and there's nothing interesting about this guy that I haven't seen in something else.
Sure.
And then you go back and you watch it, and you say to yourself, well, I'm right, but there's some interesting symbolism. This links up with this thing in a way that I didn't realize it before.
Yeah.
So you say, you know what, it is still an ordinary movie, but it's not a terrible ordinary movie. It has some interesting merit to it. So, I mean, there is reason to go back and watch something, even if you know for certain you're not going to like it again.
I mentioned earlier, getting back to commentaries, I mentioned earlier that one of the difficulties sometimes with something getting a release way later is it'll be an old enough film that important people you would have liked to have heard from have passed on. And we got, one of my favorite commentaries is on Danger Diabolik. And the actor who played Diabolik did a commentary, obviously years and years after the fact. I want to say that release was like somewhere around 09 and 08, 09, and he passed like maybe a few months or a year after it.
Wow.
And it's so cool we got his commentary before that. And I mean, like, his faculties were all about him. He was perfectly lucid. He was fantastic. And I was so glad that it got that DVD release and that he agreed to do that before he got too old. That kind of thing is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that we get a whole bunch of commentaries on the 60s Batman DVDs when that gets released with Burt Ward and Adam West, because they're getting up there in years now. And so, I really hope that they go into a studio, and I'm sure they will. Adam West loves talking about that stuff. But I'm hoping they go in and do a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, so that's an interesting part of this too.
And that's another thing. I mean, I think that's a terrific point that some of this stuff is just now getting a DVD release that has been just dead for years and years. And we're getting old actors that are coming back and saying things or saying things about them, and by God, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
Man,
it is.
That's neat.
When we were kids, we didn't even think about these kinds of behind the scenes things, and how much more do you learn? How much of a classroom is it often? And that's one of the things I always say about listening to a lot of Joss Whedon's commentaries is it feels like sitting in a film class.
Something that I think would be interesting to hear, and I haven't seen any movies like this or read anything about it, and I'm sure it exists. I've just never sought it out. But the only reason is that it just now occurs to me.
Yeah.
If you look at Stephen King's career, he starts off as a very genre writer, some of it being kind of not that great, we'll say that, and then evolving into a writer who can write in multiple genres and do something.
He's still a genre writer. He just doesn't always do the same genre, but I think everything he does is usually genre. Yeah.
There was something he wrote that was literary fiction.
He's done literary fiction. That's
I think so.
Not supernatural at all.
I think so.
I mean, that wasn't just a short story.
I think so.
Wow.
I think he has.
I'll have to seek that out. I want to say, and I could be wrong, I want to say Stephen King has done some film commentaries.
I mean, I would like to think that at some point, I would like to hear what he has to say now about some of the stuff he's written back in the day.
Yeah.
And I think that would be interesting.
But I'd like to hear him talk about some of the movies based on his works, too.
I mean, especially stuff
that's great.
That he worked on that wasn't even a book first. I mean, that'd be kind of neat, too.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great to hear... Well, I'd love to hear him do a commentary on Maximum Overdrive, because even he agrees it's not very good.
I mean, that's the thing, is that a person can look back at their career and go, you know what? I did it. I was proud of it when I did it, and that was what I could do when I was doing that.
Yeah, or you could
talk about it.
Or you could be like Prince and hate everything you did before a certain year.
Which is weird, because, Prince did some really good stuff.
Yeah, well, at least he had that for a while. I think he, at some point, claimed to change his mind. I don't know. Anyway, I just thought that was funny.
His name a couple times.
Yes, he is now the artist formerly known as Prince. Anyway, wouldn't it be interesting? And again, I'm throwing out stuff that I don't think exists. Wouldn't it be amazing to listen to film commentaries with J.K. Rowling?
Yeah, that'd be neat.
Stuff like that.
I mean, she's had interviews about that stuff.
Yeah, interviews, but interviews are different than commentaries. It's so interesting to get to listen to somebody talk about the thing while you're watching it with them, as if they're there in the room with you. That's why commentaries are so enjoyable.
I would love to see J.K. Rowling and the people who wrote the scripts for the Harry Potter movies sit down individually and her talk about where it deviated from her original ideas.
Yeah.
And how they coped with that fact, considering they had to shove it down into 2 hours or so. So I think that's a great idea. The only trouble is that can you really trust that you're getting a sincere commentary with people not just patting each other on the back like, no, you did fine.
Very often you can't, and you're right, that's a thing too, and that's why I said, when I can tell it's kind of fluff, I really don't like that. But, it can be an interesting study of the person. Excuse me, even when it is that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it would almost
that's
say
sort of unreliable narrator at that point. If you're looking at this almost as if you're looking at a snapshot of the story of an individual,
Yeah, let's say that she is 100% pleased with everything they did, and that could just be.
That's a lot of the reason I think that she probably would not have ever done that, because we know that she wasn't.
I mean, if she came out and said, "Hey guys, this was great," not to say that she did, but she said, "Oh man, I loved everything you guys did," that would almost be like saying, "I just like the fact that something I made was a huge selling book and a huge selling movie series."
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, I'm happy right now, as opposed to this is what I actually think, or I will not allow myself to think or say what I know.
But you
don't
want to listen to that for 2 hours.
Yeah, that'd be hard.
Yeah. Another thing I really enjoy is some of the actors and people who have such a reputation for being comedians, who basically are just comedians in a commentary. Sometimes that can be really fun. Sometimes it can, I suppose, be irritating. But two of my favorite commentaries, again, Adam West commentary on '60s Batman, is as entertaining. The film is as entertaining as the movie is. It's hilarious, and it's also really informative. But he and Burt Ward are so sarcastic in that. It's really funny. It's one of those commentaries where they say things that aren't true, but you can always tell when it's not. That kind of thing can be really funny. I also really love Weird Al Yankovic's commentary on UHF. If you've never heard that, totally freaking do it. It's great. I've
been looking for Spatula City. I just can't find it.
There's a part of that where, well, and I always wanted to go on Wheel Fish, but
Wheel Fish.
Supplies! Red Snapper, it's very tasty. There's this part in his commentary where he gets. I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. Weird Al Yankovic keeps getting up and down from his seat, like you see him as like a shadow, sort of like Mystery Science, which is ironic because he does riff tracks now every now and again. He actually will do riff tracks with the riff track guys. I think he's done a few of them. And anyway, he'll be in the front, and he'll get angry, and he'll get up and leave, and then he'll come back, and yeah, he's really fun. He basically riff tracks his own movie, which is fantastic. But it's because he's Weird Al. You know, like that's what you want from Weird Al.
Yeah.
That's a guy that you really don't want him to break character. And he's also one of those guys where I don't think he ever does break character. I think he is exactly the way he sells himself.
I would like to hear a commentary a dialogue between Prince and Danny Elfman on the Batman movie, 89 Batman.
Another of my, this is obscure, another of my favorite commentaries is on a compilation DVD of music videos made by They Might Be Giants. The two Johns sit down. You should listen to that. It's funny. The two Johns sit down, and there's a play all feature, and you can play that with the commentary. And they talk through. They sit down and watch all the music videos on the disc back to back to back. With you while you're watching it, and it's really informative. But they're so dry-witted that every now and again they'll just say something that's completely hysterical. Did you ever see the Tiny Toons episodes that have the Giant songs in them?
Yes.
Okay. There's this. They're watching these, and they put those on there at the end of it.
Oh, that's
cool.
Awesome.
They're in there, and you get to the end of it, and the Johns hadn't seen them since they aired, and so you're listening to them commenting on it for the first time since they aired. And if people that don't know what I'm talking about, Tiny Toon Adventures did two little shorts inside episodes of Tiny Toons with They Might Be Giant songs. One of them was Istanbul, and one of them was Particle Man. And during Particle Man, they envision in Tiny Toons in Particle Man all of the superheroes as instead wrestlers. And Triangle Man is like this huge, giant, beefy, creepy guy with a mask on and a big triangle. No, he's got a big triangle. I think he's giant. And they have these parts where in the song, Triangle Man beats Person Man, and whenever that'll happen, Triangle Man will come in and he'll just cartoon violence start like snapping people all over the place and bashing them with frying pans and things.
Particularly Plucky Duck, right?
Yes, yeah, and I'm trying to remember who Plucky Duck is in that. Anyway, Plucky Duck gets. I think so.
Yeah,
I forget.
He's the normal guy.
Yes, but then hit on the head with a frying pan, and then the Johns during that, they start going, oh, this is a little violent. And then later on, John Linnell goes, this is entirely violent. And I don't know why, that was so funny to me.
That is pretty funny.
Anyway, hey, why don't we, unless there was something else you wanted to...
No, I think Plucky was the main character, or the main character used in in Istanbul as well.
Yeah, he was.
I think it was Plucky
that one was cool too.
Hampton.
Hampton, yeah. Why don't we talk a little bit about fan commentaries? People posting commentaries, be it as podcasts or on YouTube, which has become a big thing now that I didn't see a lot of people doing before we started doing it. A lot of people do it now. What would you say to people who want to make their own commentaries on things that, of course, they didn't work on, but things that maybe they think they have enough insight to bring, or maybe they are funny enough, to do more of a riff tracks kind of thing? What advice would you give people?
I would never participate in one of those.
Well, that's the reason I feel we've done quite a few. People watch them, people like them. I feel like maybe we're somewhat qualified to give advice on this kind of thing.
I'm full of it. Anyway. I would say that, and I realize it's hard not to do this, but if you're doing something like a commentary about your favorite movie, it's hard not to just say, oh, so good. Did you see that? That's funny, and that's so good. And man, that's good. No, have something to say. You can't just sit back and watch the movie and then go, ha ha ha, because nobody wants to listen to you laugh. Nobody wants to listen to you just pat somebody on the back for doing a good job on a movie. They want to know what you have to say about it. They want to know what about this movie impacted you and how did it impact you and why is that interesting to other people. So maybe we're learning something about the person who is doing the commentary, or maybe we're learning something about the movie. Maybe the person is kind of an expert on that movie. So let's dig deep into what this movie's really about.
I think a little of both is great. Yeah. The way I like to approach them is pretend like you're sitting with a group of friends and you're all just enjoying this movie, but you're all talking during it because you know it really well, and it's fun to discuss it while you have the things directly on the screen to react to. So I try to be as informative, but also as kind of laid back and conversational.
Yeah.
As I can. But also, the way we do them, we like to do a kind of a podcast that is also a commentary. So we talk through every bit of it as we can. I think some people prefer commentaries where you're watching the movie and you're in the movie and then occasionally somebody says something. I don't prefer those because, and you remember early on, I guess I'm jumping back and forth now between both kinds of commentaries, but you remember early on when DVD commentaries got big, you'd hear a lot of, and every now and again you still hear somebody say it, you'd hear a lot of the people doing commentaries say, I sure hope this isn't the first time you're watching this movie. Why would anybody watch a movie with commentary the first time? And so the thing is, you have to expect that the person that is watching it, that is watching your commentary, is watching it because they're familiar with the movie. It's an extra thing. It's a special feature. Some people are considered incredibly nerdy for watching all of these special features. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm not judging. I do it too. You learn a lot. It is the extra material. It is the encyclopedic material. For a lot of movies, it's all we have, and so it's worth exploring those things. The thing is, when I watch a commentary, be it a fan thing or be it that sort of thing, I can get kind of restless in my seat if I have to watch 10 minutes of this movie I just watched.
Yeah.
With nothing being said, because I'm kind of here to listen to you talk about it, and that's the reason I like to make ours more of a podcast, where we give, where we even make it to where theoretically you can listen to it even without watching the movie.
I tend to get annoyed when there's empty space in a commentary because I'm listening to this for the commentary, especially if they do this thing where they'll quiet down the movie and then have the commentary going over the top of it, and then there's empty space, and I'm like, well, now I can't hear the movie that I wasn't intending to watch. So, I would rather there be empty space than people going, you like gum?
That's pretty good. That's actually something maybe to address too. This is kind of dry stuff, but like sound level stuff. Like I've heard commentaries where there's no track except for the speaking. I've heard commentaries where the commentary track is not level enough with the other track, so it gets overpowered by it. Mm-hmm. I don't like that. I like a balance. I want to be able to sort of hear the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some DVDs, they just don't fix the audio levels, and suddenly you can't hear anything either way. But and those annoy the crap out of me.
I'll usually watch a commentary the same way I do a commentary, which is with subtitles.
Yeah,
because if you turn on most commentary tracks, you turn on a subtitle, you're not seeing the subtitles of the commentary track.
Fair enough. I think you should, because who cares what the characters are saying in a movie? That's not the important part. The important part of the sex and violence, right?
Yes.
That's right.
There's too much sex and violence on TV. Vince, any final thoughts?
I guess advice for people who are making these things.
Yeah, sure.
Have fun. Don't be afraid to get jokey with it. Don't be afraid to, especially if because sometimes there's not a lot to say about every instance of a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have something to say. You can really flesh out your idea, and then just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit. Commentate on something that's happening, but you don't have to not everything you say has to be 100% pertinent.
No,
I mean,
and I think it's fun to explore a little too. Like, I don't think you have to have every point you want to make fully realized. I think it's different than reviewing. I think you can do it that way. I think if you want to do a really polished commentary, maybe even scripted. I mean, that's what the Riff Tracks guys do. I think even if it's not comedic, and you want to do something, you know, here's another one. Did you listen, when you watched Dark City, did you listen to Roger Ebert's commentary on that? It's great. That is if you like that movie, that is a must watch. Because he got so familiar with that movie, he loved it so much that he had all of this insight and all of these really interesting, literary analysis. I felt weird reviewing that movie because I was like, well, I don't want to just regurgitate everything you just said, but you covered it pretty thoroughly. So you know, I really enjoy those kind of commentaries too, and that's another one where I couldn't tell how much it was scripted. He was so completely organized and totally structured. So I think those kind of commentaries can be really cool. But I think that if you are not that, if you're not going to be that organized, if you're not going to read from a script, or you're not going to have notes for every single scene that you're going to cover while you're going, be more relaxed with it and allow yourself to explore the ideas and explore you know, the stuff that you're looking at to allow maybe new ideas to erupt during the commentary. I think that can be, that kind of thing can be really interesting too. To listen to somebody go, my goodness, I never thought about it like this before, and to be there when that happens, I think can be very interesting.
Completely agree.
Let's go ahead and go on to rants now. Vince, what is your rant for this week, sir?
All right, this won't take very long, but whenever I'm reading some kind of fantasy thing, especially, let's say, something that's written by someone about a character that was not theirs originally, but I'm reading some kind of fantasy thing, and the names are just like somebody dropped a cat on a keyboard, and it's Yggdrasil, and okay, so that's the town. What's the name of the girl? Yggdrasil. Oh, so Yggdrasil is from Yggdrasil. This is nonsense. And you know what? One of the things, I'm reading People of the Black Circle right now, for Conan People of the Black Circle, and the last issue, I guess it tells you when this was shot, just came out today, so I haven't finished it.
Oh, okay. But, no, that's cool.
But the writer...
Just so people know, sometimes these come out a couple weeks after we recorded them. Go ahead, man.
The thing about it is that it doesn't make... Sometimes I just read it, and I'm like, you know what, maybe this is based on a Robert E. Howard story, and maybe these names are on par with what Robert E. Howard said. Maybe this is transcribed. So maybe it's not Fred Van Lente, or however you say that gentleman's name. Maybe it's not his fault. But you know what? It's still nonsense, regardless of who thought it up. Because it really does. It looks like somebody took their keyboard and then tried to type it with their tongue, but they have a lisp, so they're like... They're just hitting buttons.
So you're not complaining about alien language where, like, it's not anything like you've heard before. Maybe it's slightly different to pronounce, but if you look at it, you can break up the syllables. Because, you know, I've gotten that complaint.
Hard to pronounce, don't care.
Okay, I've gotten that complaint with my novel a few times, and I'm like, well, guys, these people aren't from here. You know, you know what I mean? Like,
you know, I don't mind hard to pronounce.
I don't feel like Rajal Chirac's that tough. Like,
you know, but that's the thing, is that there should be some kind of legibility to it.
Yeah.
You should be able to say, this sounds like a name. It doesn't sound like somebody took their finger and went like this on a keyboard.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I made fun of that in a Spawn comic in Spawn Year recently, where there was this, Maman pretends to be this, to be fair, it is something he makes up, so maybe he's just being a jerk face, but he pretends to be this demon that I still can't pronounce it. It's got like 4 A's in a row or something, and then there's a couple places where it's got like 3 or 4 consonants. It's like Nehezdzaheel or something, and I just like, you can't. I have no idea. I know there's an L and H and a couple of E's and A's in there.
You know, but that's the thing, is that you should be able to look at a word, and if it's supposed to be a name, it should sound like a name. It doesn't have to sound like an Earth name.
You know, at the very least, you ought to be able to tell me how many syllables are in it.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to look like, you know, an Americanized name with a first, middle, last name. Not everybody has to be named Brian.
If you want to be funny, if you want to be kind of funny and make it something where, like, it's unpronounceable, just have the character say it once, and then another character be like, that's unpronounceable. And then they give him a nickname or something after that. That's always fun. I like that. But at least it knows what it's doing.
I'm calling you Lucky, but my name is Leoctiche. Okay, Lucky. You enjoy that name.
Yeah.
You're Lucky from here on out. You are belittling my people, sir. But
that's your rant.
But that's my rant. Not to say that I don't like. It should look like a name. That's all I'm saying. It should look like a name. Something that somebody would likely say to someone without going. That was hard to say.
I'm going to talk, my rant now, I'm going to talk about Oscar snubs real quick, and the big one that kind of annoyed me this year is less what didn't get nominated and more of something that did. And I realize that the Oscars are judged in a certain way where not, like all the judges don't see all the movies that come out, and they, you tend to move towards certain kinds of things and certain kinds of actors and things like that. So I'm not even going to complain about the lack of superhero movies and anything like that. How in the world did Lone Ranger get nominated for 2 technical awards?
Because it was technically bad.
Well, here's the thing, and I know you liked it more than I did, but it got.
I still gave it a not feeling it.
It got nominated for makeup and it got nominated for visual effects. Now, technical awards are never a big deal to people, but I'm only complaining about this because Hunger Games got nominated for nothing, and I feel like it should have been in both of those categories. I feel like, yeah, okay, I can sort of kind of see that with Lone Ranger, especially with special effects, and I guess I can see it with makeup too. But shouldn't Hunger Games have at least been on both of those lists, right? Especially hair and makeup.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Okay, I guess I am complaining more about something that didn't get nominated than I am about something that did. But it's still kind of, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't even be noticing that Hunger Games wasn't there if it weren't for the fact that Lone Ranger is. That's so weird in my brain. And I don't mean that because it got panned because nobody saw it, it shouldn't get awards. I'm just saying that I didn't feel like those two things were spectacular in that movie. I thought they were okay.
Well, I mean, in Lone Ranger's defense,
yeah, sure.
It did do a good job of convincing me that Johnny Depp was a racially insensitive polar bear. Wait, was he not a polar bear?
No, he wasn't a polar bear.
Oh.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, then it was terrible. Anyway, because he's like pasty white throughout the whole movie.
I don't even understand that joke, but okay.
He's like pasty white throughout the whole movie, and he just has a dead creature on his head. And what would carry around a dead creature except for a vicious animal?
I'm not going to get into that because I watched a review somebody made where they defended the movie and explained where that stuff came from.
Well, I'm sure it came from somewhere.
And I can sort of see that. But anyway,
but nobody else in the movie did that.
That's not the point I'm making. I just, well, yeah, but we didn't really do a lot with his tribe.
That's true.
Okay, anyway, Vince. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying.
I just wanted to say something weird.
Okay, anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it just kind of bugs me sometimes with like things that, I don't think that movie will win either of those, and it doesn't really matter to me if it does. But I just, it seemed to me like those two categories were both things that blew me away with Hunger Games, and it should have gotten nominated. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. I agree.
Anyway, well, that's all I've got. So everybody, thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you again next week. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince. Support your local comic book store!
That's what I was waiting for.